So that concludes our presentations, and we'll open the floor to questions.
My family started very early with repair and recycle. In our play center, the supervisor had a box called wood, cardboard, string. And that was my son's favorite place to go. It kept him occupied for 2 years, 3 years in play center. We still do it.
Aww,
Wonderful.
Beautiful.
Thank you. My question is to Brigitte. You said you had a link with time banks. Would you tell us about that, and time banks, being the currency which is 1 hour of work rewarded no matter what your work? Tell us where they were, and because that's a huge movement for social cohesion, which we need, because you trade with people you don't know.
Yeah. Thank you very much for the question. Yes, we are basically mainly in Northland. Time banks are engaged with repair cafes, so they do the coordination as well as the repair, volunteering. There's something in Christchurch as well, so yeah, we are developing that network. Thank you.
Kia ora, ko lani ki reo pahai. Thank you for your presentations. Before I ask the question, I just want to make a few points, and that is that marae, we're always zero waste, that our whānau will and would and still do koha food, whether that be meat from our hunters, veggies from our marakai, kaimoana from our whānau who live near rivers, lakes and moana. We host hundreds of people of all occasions, utilising resources that we build up at our marae for our collective usage over generations. The systems imposed on us by non-Māori are what break down our circular economies, forcing us to access our food from supermarkets, pay power companies for our heat, light and energy, etc. And yet the majority of New Zealanders consider marae and pā with our community resilience to be something separate from normal life in Aotearoa, something to fear, despise and for the most part disregard. The majority of what I've heard over the past few days, which I've really enjoyed, thank you, has been rightly focused on what Pākehā need to do to degrowth Pākehā systems. At the same time, I want to say again that iwi need the support of non-Māori to be resourced and supported to rebuild and build on our resilience as a people. None of the conversations this weekend have touched on the uncomfortable solutions that Indigenous peoples, First Nations people around the world would like to talk about, which include land back, resources back. And I'd like to know if there's any comments from anyone on the panel, or anyone who's spoken this weekend on that kaupapa. Thank you.
Kia ora. Thank you. Thank you so much. And I've had such a challenge, in my role at least, so I'm going to speak personally, trying to figure out how to even talk about degrowth in our society here. And often what I start with is saying that degrowth is for those who are over-consuming. Degrowth is not for Indigenous people. Degrowth are for the over-consuming colonizers, yeah? And so we are here really pivoting towards you, to learn from you, and also to take responsibility for what we have done wrong and what we need to do better. So that would be my personal response. Would you like to add anything?
Yeah, I just want to thank you for your comment, and it's spot on, and that from a circular economy perspective, the linear economy is essentially the extractive economy that was put in place by imperial powers when they were colonizing. So that's the legacy of that history is where we are at today in terms of our wastefulness and over-extraction of the planet's resources. And I also want to acknowledge that in Aotearoa, the sister organisation of the Zero Waste Network is Parakorea, which is the Kaupapa Māori Zero Waste organisation, and they are doing incredible mahi across the whole country and connecting in with marae and connecting back to exactly all the things you said about, this is Mātauranga Māori living without waste. Well, waste isn't even a concept. And Parakorea are really, really strong as well on talking about the need to have these bigger conversations about what is the whakapapa of the system that we have today, and talking about resourcing Māori, land back, all of the things that you said, and organisations like the Zero Waste Network strongly support that, as well as the Aotearoa Plastic Pollution Alliance, which is striving to be a te tiriti organisation and doing things in partnership. And one of the things that the Aotearoa Plastic Pollution Alliance has done, you may be aware there's a global plastics treaty that's currently being negotiated. And the Aotearoa Plastic Pollution Alliance applied for international funding to establish a tangata whenua coalition with a coordinator who is going to those international negotiations, representing, basically leading with a Māori first approach. And that's recognised at, within the NGO community that we need to be moving to this space of resourcing Māori to be in these positions where they can lead and be supported to lead, and also that it is the job of Pākehā to create that funding and that support. So, yeah, completely support what you're saying.
So about 5 years ago, when I started looking into online resources about zero waste, I found a lot of, let's say, influencers and entrepreneurs, but then everything was very end of pipe, zero waste. It felt like it was very status quo, and their only concern was about not throwing the little piece of paper in the rubbish in the end, with very little concern about the life cycle of the products they were using, even if it was shipped across like the planet to be delivered to them. And I was wondering, Hannah, if you've seen anything like that in your journey about a little, let's say, essentially greenwashing in terms of zero waste here in Aotearoa. Kia ora.
Yeah, I mean, I think probably all three of us could talk to that. Zero waste is like anything. It can be greenwashed and co-opted by capitalism. Capitalism is great at that. And so, yeah, I'm not going to hate on the people who are in that paradigm. Just to say that zero waste as a philosophy and as a movement is the whole life cycle. It's about prevention, it's about system change, it's not about tinkering at the end. And there's a saying in the zero waste movement, if recycling is the answer, you're asking the wrong question. So yeah, and also I think too, there is always this tension in the zero waste movement between businesses who are trying to create alternative products to support people to live low waste and the sort of non-consumption side of the movement, and I think those things coexist. And I think there are tensions in the world of zero waste in the sense that you've got the not wanting to reduce waste and not wanting to create new stuff, but we also have a world that is full of toxic plastic products that are harming us on a day-to-day basis. And so there is a little bit of a tension around, well, how do we sort of transition away from that? And that's going to require some replacement. Which requires some manufacturing. And so, yeah, it comes back to that question about carbon budget and how do we prioritize. And those are such big conversations for people to have. So, yeah, but, yeah. Okay.
Oh, I would just say, I would agree. The devil is in the detail. And there's lots of different ways to measure whether something like life cycle assessments and whatnot. And I've personally got into a lot of circular business models and looked at them, and I think I said it the other week that some of them are absolute bullshit. So you really need to look at like what is the intention behind the business model? Like what are they trying to do? And sometimes, it's not a great use of whatever the material is. You're better off getting rid of it and moving on to just eliminating it. But yeah.
Yeah, and I will say life cycle analysis is also co-opted by industry to hate on attempts to reduce plastic and reduce waste as well. So there's a whole minefield.
And when I come back to it, like when you go into all of that scientific detail, you just come away and you go, actually, we just need to consume 50 to 75% less. And if you live with just that simple message that at least half your lifestyle, think of what it was like in the 80s. That's kind of a good starting point.
Yeah. I've got a quick question. Have we got a microphone out there, or are you passing the mic? While you're passing the mic, I have one quick question that I will raise while you're doing that. which I think is something that we haven't talked enough about at this conference at all yet, and that is the issue of redistribution and allocation. And so I think that is something that we will come to. Have you got the mic, Paul? Yeah, okay.
Here. I was waiting to
Oh,
ask
you've got
a
one
question.
as well.
Is it all right to ask my
You
question?
go first, and then we'll go
Look,
to...
you may have already talked about this, and because I'm actually at the point in the conference where my attention is in and out a little bit, but I'm really interested in a bit of elaboration on the right to repair movement, like the top-down sort of thing that's happening, rather than just not just but as in addition to the bottom-up stuff that's going on. Have you got any information or any thoughts on that you could give us, Brigitte?
The right to repair, I guess, we have done the, bottom up, and so now it just sits with government. And there are also, of course, many fantastic examples in Europe and the States, that we can take into consideration. They are all mentioned in our submissions, also with the references and so forth. So at the moment, we are waiting to hear from government, and there will be submissions invited, for us to respond. I think that's all I can say at this point.
Thank you, that's great. Yeah. Paul.
Kia ora. I'd like to acknowledge the great presentation we've just had. I'd just like to expand it just a little bit. I think Hannah mentioned colonialism. 500 years ago, we started extracting the guano deposits from Chile and Peru. And since that time, we've moved to become totally dependent on artificial fertilizers and nitrogen from, using our fossil fuels for that as well. But before that, we fertilised our farms and our horticulture with animal and human sewage. And basically, at the minute, we're extracting, we've mined the Pacific and we've gone to Western Sahara. It's totally unsustainable and it's dependent on cheap fossil fuels. So it's going to end. But we can do things in a different way. And I was part of a Ministry of Environment working group on organic materials, and that came out with a conclusion that you needed 2 years to make human sewage safe. But most places, or Europe, accept that it only takes 1 year. So there's compost toilets like Clevis Moultrie, which has a baffle board at the right angle. So when it reaches the bottom after a year, it's a fine powder and totally safe to put on your gardens. So this is what we actually need to do. At the minute, we throw all that waste away, and the three waters, it's the whole thing as well. So naturally, we should have rainwater collection tanks and recycle grey water. But the government is talking about spending billions and billions of dollars of replicating the same system that they've got at the moment, which cannot last and won't, because we won't actually have those artificial fertilisers. So I don't actually see any campaign, but Celia Wade-Brown, as the Mayor of Wellington, did push this, and we actually had a demonstration compost toilet near the Polytechnic for a couple of years. But I think it's about time we started talking about, that's very sensitive. Many people, the minute you're talking about human sewage, oh, no, we can't touch that, But actually, it's perfectly, if you do things in the right way, it actually is perfectly okay and safe. You just have to do it right. And most people are living in houses with vegetable matter available in gardens and compost. So you just put a bit of organic material in every day, and it comes out with this fantastic fertiliser.
Thank you, Paul. Yes, thank you. And we have run out of time, but I just make a final comment on that because it's related. The topic of tiny houses that I wanted to talk about as well, there's so much more that we haven't been able to cover in this 2-day conference. But tiny houses are an extraordinary solution for the housing crisis, the ecological crisis, and yet they're not sanctioned by a lot of bylaws. So there is a problem there, but they are often made with reused materials, and they are made with extraordinary craftsmanship. And my brother, who is behind the video, has an extraordinary example, and my partner has made his own tiny house as well. And it means that we all live on the same property. So we are sharing resources, and it is a joy. So thinking about how we can do things creatively together and more simply is what inspires me, yes. And also, acknowledging, as Brigitte did, that, we have people with extraordinary knowledge who are getting older, who have wisdom that they want to share and skills that they want to share. And using that in a repair sort of capacity is just wonderful. And I also think making it cool. My brother is one of the repair guys at the local cafe, so like this is a place where the youth can go and get inspired because it's a cool thing to do. So with that, I will end on time and thank our panel very, very much.